Muscle loss triples your fall risk after 60, but here's what nobody tells you. One small evening habit can switch muscle repair back on, in one night, not months. Sleep is often treated like a pause button, as if the body simply shuts down to recover from the day. That idea is not just wrong, it's damaging. During the night, especially after 60, the body enters its most biologically active repair phase. This is when muscle tissue is assessed, damaged fibers are flagged, energy systems are recalibrated, and rebuilding decisions are made. Exercise does not build muscle. Exercise only creates the request. Sleep is when the body decides whether that request is approved or ignored. Deep sleep is the repair window. There's a quiet misunderstanding that sleep only exists to prevent exhaustion, as if its job ends once you feel rested. In reality, deep sleep is when the body releases growth hormone, ramps up muscle protein synthesis, repairs mitochondria, and turns down chronic inflammation. These processes naturally weaken with age, not because the body is incapable, but because the signals that trigger them become fragile. Deep sleep is the environment where repair is allowed to happen. Without enough of it, even the most consistent training produces disappointing results. Think of sleep as an overnight repair crew entering a building after hours. The work is meticulous, slow, and deliberate. If the crew is rushed, interrupted, or locked out early, the job stays unfinished. I've seen this play out countless times, including with a woman in her early 70s who exercised faithfully for years, yet grew steadily weaker. Only when her sleep became longer, more consistent, and less fragmented did her strength begin to return. Nothing about her workouts changed. The repair window finally opened. When sleep becomes shorter, irregular, or shallow, the body prioritizes survival over rebuilding. Muscle repair is postponed. Over time, postponed repair becomes chronic loss. This is why strength can decline even in people who stay active. The issue isn't effort, it's access to the repair window. Daytime muscle use primes nighttime repair. Sleep does not rebuild muscle in a vacuum. The body needs context. During the day, when muscles are used under load, even gently, cells become sensitized. They mark themselves for attention later. Without that daytime signal, nighttime repair becomes vague and inefficient. The body doesn't rebuild what it hasn't been told is necessary. It's similar to renovating a home. Repairs don't happen simply because workers show up at night. Someone has to mark the walls, identify the cracks, and leave instructions. In the body, that marking happens through resistance and load-bearing movement. When that signal is present, sleep becomes productive. When it's absent, sleep becomes maintenance at best. I remember a man in his late 60s whose legs were steadily weakening despite long walks every day. Walking kept him mobile, but it didn't send a clear enough message. Once simple, controlled movements that loaded his muscles were added earlier in the day, his nighttime recovery changed. His sleep stayed the same. His nutrition stayed the same. The signal finally had meaning. Timing matters here. When muscle use happens too close to bedtime, stress hormones remain elevated and interfere with deep sleep. When it happens earlier, the body has time to calm down, interpret the signal, and prepare for repair. The message is delivered during the day. The rebuilding happens at night. Protein and leucine set the repair instructions. Even with good sleep and meaningful muscle use, repair still requires raw materials. After 60, muscle tissue becomes less responsive to protein, a phenomenon known as anabolic resistance. This doesn't mean protein stops working. It means the threshold for activation is higher. The body needs clearer instructions and enough building blocks to follow through. Protein provides those instructions. Specific amino acids, especially leucine, act like switches that tell muscle cells to turn on repair machinery. Without enough of them, nighttime rebuilding stalls, no matter how good sleep looks on paper. This is why people can sleep 8 hours and still wake up weaker over time. Think of protein as the blueprint handed to the repair crew. Without it, workers arrive but don't know what to rebuild. I've watched strength gains finally appear in older adults only after protein intake was distributed more evenly across the day, rather than saved for a single meal or skipped unintentionally. Once the body received consistent instructions, sleep finally became productive again. A protein-free evening doesn't create rest, it creates confusion. The body enters its most anabolic phase without the materials it needs, and repair is delayed yet again. Over months and years, that delay becomes visible weakness, not because aging won, but because the instructions were incomplete. If this is changing how you think about sleep and strength, subscribe now. Each week, I share clear signals your body still understands, so your nights rebuild muscle instead of stealing it. Even when sleep duration looks adequate, and even when movement and nutrition appear reasonable, muscle repair can still fail quietly. This is the most frustrating situation because it feels like everything is being done right, yet strength continues to slip away. The missing piece is often not effort, but interference. At night, the body becomes extremely sensitive to internal signals, and certain forms of biological noise can overpower the very messages that trigger repair. When that happens, the repair window is technically open, but nothing meaningful gets done. Cortisol and inflammation are the silent blockers. As the body prepares for sleep, it's meant to shift out of alert mode and into restoration. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, should fall. Inflammation should quiet down. This hormonal drop is not about relaxation for comfort's sake. It's a biological requirement for muscle protein synthesis and growth hormone signaling to proceed. When cortisol remains elevated late into the evening, repair signals are suppressed, even if sleep continues uninterrupted. This is why nighttime recovery can fail without obvious warning signs. The body may lie still in bed for hours, but internally it's stuck in a low-grade emergency state. Muscle tissue interprets that environment as unsafe for rebuilding. Instead of investing energy in repair, the body conserves resources. Over time, that conservation shows up as weakness. The effect is subtle but cumulative. Stress carried from the day, late digestion, or inflammatory triggers can keep the nervous system activated long after lights are off. It's like trying to hear detailed instructions in a room filled with static. The message exists, but it never lands clearly enough to act on. I've seen recovery return simply when nighttime conditions became quieter inside the body. Not more sleep, not harder training, just fewer competing signals. When cortisol settles and inflammation drops, the repair machinery finally has room to operate. Poor sleep quality isn't normal aging. One of the most damaging beliefs about aging is the idea that fragmented, unrefreshing sleep is simply how later life works. Waking frequently, feeling unrested, or starting the day already fatigued is often dismissed as unavoidable. Biologically, that assumption carries a cost. Sleep disruption interferes with oxygen delivery, hormone release, and cellular repair, all of which are essential for preserving muscle tissue. Conditions like sleep apnea, chronic pain, or inadequate energy intake fragment sleep in ways the body cannot compensate for. Each interruption cuts into deep sleep cycles where muscle repair is concentrated. Over months and years, the repair crew keeps getting called away before the job is done. The result is not just tiredness, but accelerated muscle loss and rising frailty risk. What's important to understand is that this is not a separate problem from strength decline. It is part of the same system. When sleep quality improves, muscle repair often improves alongside it. Strength, balance, and energy follow. I've watched people regain physical capacity only after underlying sleep disturbances were addressed, even though nothing else in their routine changed. Weight loss without intention can worsen this cycle further. When the body lacks sufficient energy, nighttime repair is deprioritized. Muscle tissue becomes a fuel source rather than a structure worth preserving. Sleep becomes lighter. Recovery becomes incomplete. This is not the body failing. It is the body adapting to signals that suggest scarcity and stress. By this point, the pattern becomes unmistakable. Muscle repair after 60 depends not only on sending the right signals, but also on removing the interference that distorts them. When nighttime noise is reduced, the same signals that once failed suddenly begin to work again. And that realization leads directly to the most important message of all: how to turn every night into a clear, repeatable repair opportunity. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Muscles respond not to heroic effort, but to repeated, understandable signals. When movement during the day has purpose, the body marks tissue for attention. When nutrition provides enough raw material, the repair process has direction. And when sleep arrives on a predictable schedule, the internal environment becomes calm enough for rebuilding to proceed. None of these elements need to be perfect. What they need is alignment. Together, they form a biological sentence the body can read clearly. There is a common belief that strength fades because time simply wears the body down, but biologically the opposite is often true. Strength fades because the body stops receiving convincing reasons to maintain it. Without those reasons, muscle becomes optional. Repair becomes negotiable. This shift happens slowly, which is why it's so often missed. A little weakness here, a little imbalance there, until standing up feels heavier, and movement requires more thought than it once did. When nighttime repair improves, the changes are rarely dramatic at first. They show up subtly. Muscles feel more responsive. Recovery from activity feels smoother. Fatigue doesn't linger as long. Over weeks, those small changes accumulate. Balance stabilizes. Confidence returns to simple movements. The body begins to behave like a system that is still being maintained, not one that is being quietly shut down. The idea that older bodies are fragile by default is misleading. What they are instead is cautious. They require reassurance. Clear signals tell the body that strength is still useful, that energy is available, and that the environment is safe enough to rebuild rather than retreat. Night after night, those signals reinforce one another. The body learns that repair is not a risk but a necessity. This is where the messaging analogy becomes so powerful. When instructions are repeated and consistent, the system stops hesitating. It doesn't need to guess which tissues to protect or which systems to downscale. It follows the message it receives most often. Over time, that message shapes physical reality. Muscles adapt. Nerves respond faster. Stability improves. Independence becomes easier to hold onto. Every night offers a decision point. Not a dramatic one, but a quiet biological vote. Should this body invest in strength, or should it conserve and simplify? That vote is influenced by the signals sent during the day and the conditions present at night. When those signals align, the outcome shifts. Repair becomes the default rather than the exception. Aging does not remove opportunity. It narrows the margin for error. When that margin is respected, the body responds remarkably well. Muscle repair becomes less about fighting decline and more about supporting a process that never truly left. Each good night of sleep reinforces that process. Over time, those nights add up to something powerful. A body that continues to rebuild, not because it is young, but because it has been given clear reasons to do so.